Whenever you're ready, like I said, just a quick, if you want to do, like, for me, my name is DiGiacomo. I'm 24 years old. I'm a community liaison with
I got underwear other than that. My name is DiGiacomo. I'm a Vietnam veteran. I'm also the president of the Vietnam Veterans of Chapter 421, and I'm proud of that. I went to Brooklyn College. I wanted to get an engineering degree. So I had gone to Brooklyn College, and they had told me, the counselor said, before you go on with this, you should check with your draft board. So I said, I'm 23 years old. I don't think they're going to bother with me. I went down to the draft board, and I found out that I was going to be drafted by September of that year. Wow. And that was the summer. I said, wow, I didn't want any part of that. I didn't want to join the Army. That was the thing. I wasn't an Army person. So I had gone home, and I told my dad what's going on. He says, well, what are you going to do? I said, well, I guess I'll join the Marine Corps, And the look he gave me was scary, So we fought over it, and as time went on, he gets me in, and he tells me, why don't you go back to your school and talk to your dean? He says, I talked to him, and he's got an idea. So I went back to him, and he said, you qualify for the Seabees. I didn't know what the Seabees were, the Naval Construction Battalion. I said, I don't want to be in the Navy. I don't want to be on a ship. I'm not a sailor. So it has nothing to do with that. He says, take some tests. If you qualify, you go into a petty officer program. And you could go into Seabees with luck as a second-class petty officer. Son, I said, okay. And I did that. I went through boot camp. I took the tests. And then I went to leadership school. I took more tests. And I got my POs too, my petty officer second class. And I went as a Seabee. And that's where my military career started. I was all over Vietnam. Through the luck of the service, I got into what they call a CBMU 301. It was a unit that's always there, and they dispatch people all over. And I was dispatched Quang Tri, Qua Viet, Dung Ha, and then through, I don't know what had happened. I ended up all the way across into Tay Ninh province. They sent me to an advanced tactical support base. And when I had gotten there, I looked around. It was old PBR river patrol boats, and it was right on the Cambodian border. And I remember seeing a lieutenant come out. He's got a black beret on. I said, this is not good, because in our day, the only ones that wore berets were special forces. Okay. So I look at him, and he says, what are you doing? I always had my CB patch always embroidered on my uniform. So he says, I don't know what you're doing here. So I got my package and said, my orders. He said, well, sit tight. I sat tight. He came in, and his words were, your ass is mine. I said, oh, well, where are the rest of the Seabees? He says, you're the only one. I said, well, you got to explain to me, what am I doing here? He says, you know what? I don't know. I have no idea. Your orders were here. Probably your unit is disbanding. And you still got a lot of time left. So what do I do? So he said, well, you're a Seabee, you build, right? And I said, I do. Yeah. He says, so I had started to set up the camp because it was right on the river. In fact, the camp was behind the village. To get to the camp, you had to go through this village. And they put these advanced tactical support bases right in the heart of a bad enemy, VC. So this is why this Ben Kyo village was there. And he said, you know what? He said, this is a new camp. There were 5 of them along the river. They were there to prevent the NVA from crossing from the Ho Chi Minh Trail. So my head was spinning, because I don't know what. Well, he says, well, what you can do is start building bunkers for us in case we get overrun. And I'm saying, I went into the Seabees. I don't want any of this. And that's where I ended. I ended up almost 9 months there, and I got really close with the guys. If they needed somebody on boats at any time, since I was trained in M60s and M10, all that, I did that. And I put my tour in there. 2 months before I came home, Lieutenant calls me and he says, you got to go to Saigon. He says, because you had an appointment with some bureaucrat guy. And he says, and he wants to talk to you about re-upping. And I said, re-upping? He says, yeah, go check it out, you know, because at that point I still wasn't married or anything. So I went there and the guy talked to me, you know, it's a good deal. If you re-up, you get your first class petty officer or E6, right? He said, I think it was $13,000 in your bank account. And your next port of call is your choice. And that was nice. So I said, okay. And he said, well, he says, just before you come home, you come in, come back, and we'll sign all the papers. And I'll never forget, I got back there, and I'm looking at, there's a stack of paper about like that, and re-upping papers, and I'm going through them all. And I just asked him, I said, you know what, let me ask you a question. I said, so I know I go home for 30 days after my tour. Now that's 13 months in Nam, okay? So I get it, and it was a bad spot. It was a bad place. So I go home, 30 days, and then where do I go for my next port of call? Because I had picked Rota, Spain. Everybody talked about Rota, Spain. It was a great place. He says to me, he said, no, you don't go there. He says, you go back to Nam, you do another 6 months or so, and then you go, and I said, no. I said, where do I go? Do I go back with CBs? He says, no, no more CBs. He says, you go back to where you were because you've got time at the base, and they were going to the immunization program. So I said, I can't do another 6 months here. And I was at the end of my military career. And then I came home, and I was, like most guys, lost. You know, it was almost 10 years before I admitted I was a Vietnam veteran. Then I came here. I moved to Staten Island, and we hooked up. This is the first the chapter started in 1988 when this memorial was built, and that's when I really got involved. When I joined this chapter, I found myself, you know, and I've been dedicated since then. I've been the president since 1993 to 1998, and then from 2008 till this point. And this here, I wasn't responsible for building this memorial, but when I got involved with the chapter, the state was the one that took care of this place, and they were not. They were not. It was grass, all the foliage, and it was just a mess. And I really pushed and pushed it. I wanted to get control of this so we could do what we wanted to do. And thanks to Michael Cusick and 100 letters, the state gave me the permission to take care of this. This is on us. The Chapter 421 now takes care of this. This is ours. So I wanted it to be a place where our brothers will always be remembered, and it'll be still placed forever. We started this rebuilding program. I got my board of directors together. We started raising a lot of money, and the first thing we did was we took out all the grass. When we took down the trees, the neighbors hated us. They hated us. The only gentleman that was for us was Tom Crimmins, great guy. So after they saw what we had done, they love it now. And we did all this, and this is our crown jewel right here. This is 5 inches thick Indian black granite. Robert Flood. He did all this for us. He had this inscribed. This took months to do, and it got put in place. And then as time went on, we wanted to have some more added in. So what we did is we went over here, and we put these in. This had to be part of it. And the incredible thing about this is we put in over $90,000 into this through fundraising and all. And when it came to these 2 monuments, we ran out of money. And I never ever asked the families who come here for the Day of Remembrance, and they're totally devoted to us. I wrote a letter to them, and I asked them. And the money that came, the outpouring to the men, and we were able to finish this. And that's how we finished everything. I, including the rest of my board members and board of directors, We worry about when we get to the point where we're not going to be able to take care of this, what's going to happen to it. So I've got some ideas working, and it'll be taken care of from now on. I guess you would call it a work of love. The families that come out, have you ever been to a day of remembrance?
I have, yes.
300 people come out. I mean, they come out every year. There are people that come out now with young families. And I remember talking to some young lady. I went over there after the service. She said it was beautiful. So I said, are you family? She said, no. So I just come here because I want my children to see what this is so they could appreciate. So, I mean, that says it all. I stand there. That's my station. I would never want to give that up. And each honor guard guy does the same thing. We have our stations, and that's where we stay. Nick Castoro is our honor guard captain, and he drills us anytime we have a service, just as if we were back in the day. But this whole place means so much. My board of directors and my members, they were out here all the time cleaning up. Tom Crimmins, great guy, he used to see us practicing here, and then once in a while he would come out from his office and sneak a bottle of bourbon. He says, you guys need to drink. And what happened this September, which was incredible, was he had come over to me and he said, Gene, he says, you know what? He says, I would like to do something after the service so it just doesn't end. He says, so I said, well, what are you thinking about? I said, I want to have a little something across the street. He said, I'll clean up the area, you'll have coffee, food. So I said, okay. They had a tremendous spread. And I don't know, I can't tell you how many people came out. And it started another movement, another community movement. So from all the places I've been, Staten Island, to me, is by far, that's why I love it, is by far the best. The support we get is across the board, and I say it every time I have to speak, is we look at Democrats, we look at Republicans, there's no barrier. They're always there for us, regardless. So Staten Island, to me, is got to be the best borough in New York. I'm very happy with what's happening and what we've accomplished. I have a great bunch of guys, my brothers, I don't even call them guys. I have a great bunch of brothers behind me. One of my dearest friends was a journalist when I was at the Advanced Tackle Sport Base. I remember every once in a while when I had to go on the boats, and I used to really say, I don't belong here, this is not what I'm supposed to be doing. And I said it so many times that after a while, he gets off the boat. And this is a guy that was the captain of one of the boats. He's 25-foot PBRs. And he says, Gino, he says, I'm sick of it. I said, well, this is your job. He says, no, I'm a journalist. You're a journalist? He says, yeah, I'm a journalist, and I'm on this goddamn boat. Vietnam veterans say we are a different brotherhood. When we went to war, all we had is each other. Now, the veterans today, and I'm not taking anything from them, God bless them all, is they have the luck of going back to their hooch or whatever and flipping over the computer and talking with their family. We didn't have that. That's why we made such a strong brotherhood. There was no distinction in color. Your brother was your brother. He was by your side and you needed him. That is one of the main things I got from Vietnam and my time in the service. So when I teach, they ask me about the war. Well, you hated them? I said, no, I didn't hate them. I did not hate them. I realized that when we were there, we were fighting at their home ground. I said, how would you feel if somebody came here? So that gave me a purpose of really respecting a lot of others. When I came home from Nam, I decided I'm going to continue on. I want to get my degree. I remember every May they had what they called a May Day. And in the courtyard, they used to have this big demonstration, anti-everything. And of course, Vietnam was the #1 issue because it was still going on when I came home. So I had two other friends with me that I met at the college. And one of the guys meets you up and he's got we're still wearing a field jacket. And we're walking out and he says, what the hell is going on out there? So I said, it's a May Day thing, they do it every year. He says, well, I said, nah, you don't want to go out there because it's not for us, And I remember they had this big wooden podium And the professor who was on the podium, and he's got this guy standing next to him. And he's ranting on and on and on, and listening to all his garbage. And then he spots my friend with his field jacket. I remember he got the bullhorn, he sticks his arm out. He said, let me ask you a question. He says, are you a veteran? So he said, yeah, I am. He says, well, you're not the hero. This man is. He came from Canada, and he came back, and he's the hero for what he did. And my friend looked at me. I said, I tell you, we shouldn't have been out here. And we turned around and walked out. I remember one of my buddies, who was a Marine, landed at Kennedy Airport. Because you had to come home in your uniform. And he came home, and he went into the bathroom, and 2 or 3 guys followed him and beat him up so bad that he had to have his jaw rewired in plastic. And I could just go on and on about those days. What that did to us is it made sure that when we went through this would never happen again. And our motto for the Vietnam Veterans of America is just that: never again. We'll never let another generation. I don't want to say it. I get so choked up over it. But we've come a long way. The veterans that are after us let us know that. I can't tell you how many times a veteran will come over to me and say, thank you. If it wasn't for you guys, we wouldn't be where we are. So that kind of washes away everything, you know. Welcome home, what does it mean? It means we're home, regardless of what they did, what they said. We did our job. We didn't lose the war. Every time I hear welcome home, I say that, yeah. But do they really know, the people out there really know that we didn't lose the war? They signed the peace treaty in '73. All combat troops gone. The only people that were left in Vietnam were dignitaries and security. In 1975, North Vietnam broke the border, broke the peace agreement, and went to Saigon. That's when South Vietnam fell. So when we would come home and used to hear, you know, you lost the war. When we left Vietnam, South Vietnam was still South Vietnam, and Saigon was still Saigon, not Ho Chi Minh City. So when I hear welcome home, that resonates into me because I know what we did.
Is there anything you wish civilians understood better about the military?
To respect, to honor. I mean, what more can I say? To respect, to honor them, and to take care of them. That's what everybody has to do. The generation, your children, they don't know about Vietnam and what we went through. And sometimes you get somebody say, you know, you got to turn the page. And we tell them, you cannot turn the page because you can never let this. It's not just about us. It's about this happening again. You cannot let this happen again. The reason why I have been here so long is because they don't want me to go. I don't want them to go. The membership wants to keep it tight, and we just keep on going. This is it.